One of my favorite quotes comes from the book The Sovereign Individual, which I think every Bitcoiner should read. And it's basically like it says something along the lines of governments see their citizens as tax cattle, but now information technologies, referring to the internet and all the things that the internet has allowed, has given them wings. And I think that's such a great quote. So it's like, yeah, they see you as tax cattle, but now we have wings and we could leave and we can go to where we're treated best. And I think over time, governments are going to have to change the way they look at their citizens from tax cattle to customers.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show today. I'm super excited. I have Nico with me, founder of Simply Bitcoin. How are you doing, man?
Well, man, super excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. It's been quite a roller coaster ride the last 2 weeks. First time Simply Bitcoin's channel has been the platform, but according to all the conversations I've had with other Bitcoin YouTubers, that seems to be just part of the course. Luckily, we were able to get the channel back reinstated, and yeah, just another day making content. It's unfortunate because just the way that the platforms are structured, you have to abide by YouTube's just content guidelines, and that's just the way it is. We try really hard to adhere to those guidelines, but still, like, there's a lot of subjects that we want to talk about that we can't. And that's why I'm very optimistic about alternative platforms like X and Rumble. I think they're really great. They're really awesome. But I'm just thankful for the community to have our back. And we got some press from Zero Hedge and from Forbes, which was pretty cool. But yeah, we're just back that we're happy that we're back on air and we're moving along. So
I consume your content pretty much daily, so it was definitely something missing in my life. And like you said, at the end of the day, you want to have a voice, and if they censor your voice, that's a problem because that means you're not free to say whatever you want. So, like you, I'm very grateful about X and Rumble and Nostro. There are so many options coming out in the market. What was your journey into crypto?
I got into Bitcoin back in 2016, and I just went all in. I was pretty young at the time. I was 23 years old, and I just didn't like the situation that I was in life, and I saw it as a way out. I just went all in, and initially I got into Bitcoin via Bitcoin mining, and that went great for 2016, 2017. 2018 hit, and it didn't go so good. I wish I stuck it out back in looking back, but you just don't know. And then I got into Bitcoin media in Bitcoin only media, which didn't exist prior to 2019, 2020. It was like there was crypto and Bitcoin and crypto media, and it was all kind of like put together, but there wasn't any like Bitcoin only media. So when I started Simply, it was like the infancy of Bitcoin only media, and I did that for a couple of years. Then I joined this company called Swan Bitcoin for about a year, and I led their content strategy, and I just built out their entire YouTube channel. And I did that from 2023 to the beginning of 2024, and then the beginning of 2024, I just decided to go independent and just focus on Simply altogether. And I've been doing that, these last 8, 9 months or so. Incredibly happy and very blessed to be able to do what I do for a living. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster ride. And of course, you're holding Bitcoin the entire time, going through these ups and downs, and you get wealthier in the process, but you also you get emotionally hurt a little bit. I think anyone who tells you otherwise is crazy. I think the volatility makes you stronger, and it makes you pay your dues. Like, I think anyone who gets into the industry initially, they have a very like, I'm gonna get rich overnight, and like that's the perspective. But more than likely, the first 1 or 2 years, you're gonna lose money, and you're going to learn some very hard lessons, and you're going to probably sell Bitcoin that you'll regret selling down the road. And I call it the price of tuition. I think it's absolutely normal, and it's just part of the course. But I think it's a unique opportunity for anybody. Even now, like, price is pretty high compared to back in the day, but I think this thing's going to 1 million, and you're going to be looking back at these prices, and you're going to wish that you bought some. So I think it's a great opportunity for anyone, to save for the future and just lower your time preference a little bit. It is going to take some time. In my experience, I think it takes about 8 years, 4 years to realize it's a good idea. You do a full cycle, and then 8 years is two full cycles. So I think if you have two full cycles, like, you're going to be very happy compared to where you started. And people start in different places. So people start with nothing, people start with something, but the longer you hold and you don't sell and you don't try to trade, I think that the better outcome there is going to be for you.
In one hand, we have our wealth into Bitcoin, which is volatile, but on the other hand, our content is also time focused. So there are moments when we are in the bear market. I call it build market, not bear market, but we're into a market where retail is not engaged, people are not watching videos, and there is less people interested in the thing because it dropped 50% or whatever the reason might be. So our job is also correlated to our savings. It's one big monster. And I love what you said. I usually say 10 because I do two on top. I sparkle two on top just to be completely safe and sound. But you have to be in for the long term. For me, Bitcoin is not crypto. And the perception of crypto from the outside is, okay, well, I go in, it's a casino, I put $100 and I become a multimillionaire overnight. Whether in reality, like you said, couldn't agree more, it takes 10 years or 8 years, a couple of cycles, whatever you want to say. So from the outside, it's quite fascinating to see when I speak to people, they are not as much involved as you and me. The perception is quite interesting. I don't know if you also have the same challenge when you say, oh, I do crypto content, oh, I do Bitcoin content, I have a YouTube channel. You're probably signaling something already, right? And maybe they think they can become rich overnight.
Yeah, I mean, I emphasize that I am Bitcoin only. I think Simply has been able to build a pretty positive reputation over these years, that we've been doing this, and I think that the entrance of BlackRock into the space and the legitimization that gives the industry to the traditional players, I think goes a long way. If we're working in the industry, I don't think we need any type of legitimization. I just think that Bitcoin's game theory essentially guarantees it for it to succeed. But if you're a traditional investor and you're looking at Bitcoin, perhaps you don't feel the same way. Perhaps you still feel like it's a highly speculative asset. One of the things that I hear from friends of mine that work in the traditional financial industry is, it produces no cash flow. Like, it doesn't, these arguments, and they don't understand that it's a completely different asset to anything that's ever existed before, specifically Bitcoin. The other cryptos, I'm a capitalist and I'm a libertarian at heart. So, if you want to buy a crypto, that's up to you. I'm a Bitcoiner. I suggest and advocate for Bitcoin only. All of them lose value against Bitcoin over time. At best, they're oscillators. So, if you want to trade them, even though from my experience, most people are just better off buying Bitcoin over time. But if you want to trade them, some people are willing to take on that risk. But I think it's a lot more easy than people think. All you really got to do is just buy Bitcoin a little bit every day. Make sure you have more than the day before, and you wait, and you continue doing that for long periods of time, and you don't try to, invent things or try to get creative. And before you know it, you'll be in a much better position financially compared to when you started, and compared to the people that are still on a fiat standard. Like if your friends or your family are living and working on fiat and you're living and working on Bitcoin, you're gonna have such a huge advantage compared to them. Like on a spiritual level, on a psychological level, on a financial level, it's a cheat code. So that's what I would say. I think Bitcoin really gives you that. The cryptos, I really see them as like gambling. Um, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. That's not personally what I would advocate for. I think that most people are just better off staying humble, stacking sats, and staying solvent. So that's my two sats on that.
And when you think about it, I like to say, I don't know if you agree with me, but if you are in Bitcoin for a couple of cycles, at least, like you said, let's say 8 years, there is a very small chance that you are not a Bitcoiner. Because even if you started from the shadiest and the of the coins you could possibly name, you will have a strong portion of your portfolio. Maybe it's not 100%, maybe it's 70% or 80% or 50% if you're a degen. But you will have understood that, hey, wait a second, it's been a couple of cycles. Coins are going up and down, but there's only one which is getting adopted by nations, which is getting discussed. There is an ETF on it. So I like to think that if you stay in the cycle long enough, you will have to become eventually a maxi. I mean, it's inevitable. I don't know if you agree.
It depends like what you're coming to the space for. So a lot of people see Bitcoin as an investment, and I do see it as a way of obviously increasing your net worth. But there's another component which is the revolution aspect, which I think is a lot more exciting, and I think it's going to have a lot more consequences on society. Um, so what do I mean by that? Like I think for a very long time, uh, money and state have been combined, and the state essentially has had this unique ability and privilege to create money for free that everyone else has to work for. And a lot of the inefficiencies that you see in government, I would even make the case that a lot of the censorship that comes from government, a lot of the tyranny that comes from government, a lot of the endless wars that comes from government, you could make a very strong argument that a lot of the dysfunction that's happening in society today comes from the government's ability to create money at no cost to them while everyone else has to work for that same money. Um, and Bitcoin is a very unique system in the sense that only Bitcoin is like this. The cryptos are not like this. Bitcoin, if you want to create more Bitcoin, you have to mine it like everybody else. If you want to buy Bitcoin, you have to buy it at the same spot price as everybody else. No one gets a special deal. No one gets a special privilege or special deals or insider stuff. Like you are essentially equal to everybody else. And essentially, what that does is it protects the lower and middle classes, and it gives them the ability to save for the future without fear of debasement or confiscation. And that's really what's happening here is there's two components. There is the speculative investing aspect, like I'm going to buy this altcoin and I think it's going to 50x. And then there's the revolution, which is I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I'm going to take that Bitcoin into self custody. If enough of us do this, we're going to change the world for the better. No other altcoin can give you that because altcoins are inherently centralized. Altcoins inherently have a special group of people that benefit from either the pre-mine or the foundation or whatever, and they kind of have the same privileges as governments when it comes to money. Like they could change the rules to benefit themselves. So it really doesn't fix the problem. We need something that is truly decentralized, that has an immaculate conception. When Bitcoin was created, Satoshi had no idea that it was going to have value. Every other altcoin that's been born after that, the creators inherently knew from the beginning that it was going to have value, and that creates this dynamic where you now have censorship resistant, uncorruptible money, on which society could build on top of. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that the first country that made Bitcoin legal tender, El Salvador, and then the first public company that adopted a Bitcoin standard, in the case of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele is the most popular president in the Americas. In the case of MicroStrategy, it's outperforming NVIDIA, right? So I don't think that's a coincidence that those two things happened as soon as they adopted Bitcoin. So I think that Bitcoin's going to make the world a better place, and I think we have to separate money from state if we want things to change. I think that we have to stop asking politicians to solve our problems and just like believing that somehow an election is just going to make things better. I think that the most powerful vote you can make as an individual is to vote with your wallet, and by doing so, you're going to make the world a better place. I think the separation of money and state must happen. I think that as long as central banking exists, as long as fiat money exists, I think a portion of the human race is enslaved to their governments. And I think Bitcoin is a peaceful protest against that system of enslavement.
I completely agree. I say all the time I vote by buying Bitcoin, right? Like by be sovereign, by be able to send value peer to peer with no third party in the middle. It's an interesting situation. I agree with everything you said, by the way. I think it's the perfect money, right? Because it's portable, divisible, you can own it truly. But for me, the superpower that made me go, holy, this is something I love was ownership. There is nothing else that I can truly own entirely because everything else belongs to someone else. Everything else is an illusion. But what was your experience into it?
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't like my situation in life at the time, and I came because I thought it could make me wealthy, and that's what initially attracted me to it. I think the more time I spent going down the rabbit hole, the more I came to realize all the secondary effects, and there are a tremendous amount of them. Like the fact is that it, it we have for the first time in human history a technology like you brought up the example of going through an airport with bags of gold or bags of cash. Like I think that the limitation is like 10,000 euros or $10,000 is what the limit is. And it's funny how that $10,000 rule got established. Like the Bank Secrecy Act, which was passed in the 1970s, established that number, that $10,000 number. And if you adjust for inflation, $10,000 back in the 1970s compared to $10,000 today is the equivalent of $80,000. But that number remained the same. So it's just convenient how that works. And last year, a couple of years ago, in the Inflation Reduction Act, they tried to pass a law that would essentially make it that every $600 transaction had to be reported to the government. So it's just getting like more and more insane. But I think Jeff Booth, like the way that he puts it is beautiful. Like they have to do it that way because it's a coercive system. It's a system based on theft. And because it's a system based on theft, they have to force people to go along with it. And the way that the world should work is that the world should be deflationary just naturally. So, because of the increased efficiencies of technology and productivity, things should actually be getting cheaper. They shouldn't be getting more expensive. But because of government's manipulation of money and because of their control on money, things are just getting more expensive while they totally shouldn't be getting more expensive. So we're all just kind of forced to go along for the ride, and Bitcoin allows us to escape, and it actually does value our time and energy and work. And if you save in Bitcoin, you see everything just getting progressively cheaper over time. And it's not because, Bitcoin has special powers, it's that it's the only thing that could truly value your time without any risk of debasement coming from governments. So it's an actual representation of your work and your time and your energy. If you save in Bitcoin and you use it as your unit of account, one of the things that I hear a lot of these American politicians talk about is this idea that the American dream is dead. Maybe if you've been saving in fiat, for sure you could say it's dead. But if you've been saving in Bitcoin, not only is the American dream thriving, right? But anyone around the world could now live the American dream, and you can afford and save for a better future. And it's really interesting what happens to you psychologically when you start saving in a Bitcoin standard. All of a sudden, you have hope. All of a sudden, you can think long term. All of a sudden you could start planning out your future versus if you live on fiat and you save in fiat, it's actually incredibly difficult. Like you can't get ahead. I'm telling you, like if you are a Gen Zer or if you're a millennial, you have no chance, zero chance. Like you don't like forget about it. It's over. You're nothing more than a Russian serf. You're a slave. And Bitcoin is a way out. Bitcoin gives you that escape hatch, that ability to just opt out of the system without relying on an election or a specific politician. And let's say for whatever reason that your country starts cracking down on Bitcoin usage, you could vote with your feet. You can take those 12 to 24 words, you can get on a plane, you can walk across a border, and you could take your wealth with you. Like, good luck trying to do that with gold. Like, if it's, maybe if it's a small amount of gold, you could do it, but if it's a decent amount of gold, like, they're going to search you, they're going to find it, and they're going to take it away from you. And cash, it's the same story. And then a wire transfer, like good luck. Like especially if that government is cracking down on people leaving, they're not going to allow you to take your money out. So Bitcoin is incredibly powerful because now all of a sudden the destiny of your future is 100% in your hands and no one else's, and it's completely outside of the hands of politicians. And I think over time, what I think that's going to do to society is it becomes a forcing function. So if a government starts to become too totalitarian or starts to crack down, you're going to see people leave to other countries and other jurisdictions that treat them better. I'll give you a great example. Dubai, 0% income tax, and I see a lot of people moving to Dubai. Why? Because the 0% income tax, it's safe, and you don't have to deal with the chaos that you have to deal with a lot of the countries in the West. That's a great example. With Bitcoin, it's gonna give more and more people the ability to just say, you know what, F you, I'm leaving. And then all of a sudden, those governments are gonna get stuck with nothing. Like there's gonna be no tax base. There's going to be no people to steal from. One of my favorite quotes comes from the book The Sovereign Individual, which I think every Bitcoiner should read. And it's basically like it says something along the lines of governments see their citizens as tax cattle, but now information technologies, referring to the internet and all the things that the internet has allowed, has given them wings. And I think that's such a great quote. So it's like, yeah, they see you as tax cattle, but now we have wings and we could leave and we can go to where we're treated best. And I think over time, governments are going to have to change the way they look at their citizens from tax cattle to customers. So I'm going to attract you as a customer to move here. And I think you're going to start to see different jurisdictions over the world, all over the world, start competing for entrepreneurs and business owners and citizens. And I think you're starting to see a little bit of that in El Salvador. You're seeing that in Dubai. You're seeing that in Singapore. In the United States, you have different states that have different tax codes. So what happened during the pandemic when New York and California closed all these businesses down, a lot of people move to Texas and Florida. So that's what I mean. I think that Bitcoin empowers you not only to vote with your wallet, but also your feet. And I think over time, the bigger percentage of the global population that has Bitcoin and has Bitcoin in self custody, the more that balance of power shifts from the state to the individual.
And it's funny when you start, I don't know if it happened to you as well, but to me, when I start questioning things like, what is money? I mean, how do I save? How do I preserve my wealth? How do I, and you open those doors and everything you've been told, like I grow up in a place where, well, go to work, get a mortgage, and save money in the bank account. That's it. That's life. And everyone around me was doing it. Most people don't care about private property. They don't care about, they just want an easy life. They want to blame the God. They want to buy their house because they think it's theirs. And I think it's up to us to do as much as we can to try to say, hey, you can be your own bank. You can, I can send Nico money now with no, it could be a Sunday, a bank holiday, no fee to pay to third party. It's between me and him. And we own it.
You know, most people don't care about sovereignty and they don't care about self custody and they don't care about money, to be frank. I think most people, especially in the developed world, the bread and circuses are very strong. So I think that the incentive is not really there for people to start questioning what money is and how the system functions. And I think that that is just a matter of education and that's just a matter of time. Like that's why on Simply, what we focus on isn't necessarily like price speculation or what coins are gonna 100x or whatever. We focus solely on Bitcoin and we focus on the revolution. So that's what I think is happening here. I think Bitcoin is one of the strongest political movements the world has ever seen since the introduction of Marxism in the mid 18th century or mid 19th century. Um, the ideas and the ethos behind being a Bitcoiner are extremely powerful, and I think they're extremely political by definition. You want to separate money from state. That is extremely political. Um, I think we're in the very, very early innings of that movement. I think that movement has not gathered momentum yet. I still think most people are asleep to it. I think that there are certain ideologies that are more compatible with it, but I still think that most people just don't care. But I think that they don't care because things are convenient, because things are not broken enough for you to start questioning the very system. But that doesn't apply to everyone. That only applies to people that live in certain countries where the inflation rate is low enough for people not to question the money that they're using or their system that they're operating in. If you're in the developed world, what we're starting to see is not only the adoption of Bitcoin, but also the adoption of stable coins. A lot, like a lot, a lot. Like especially if you go to Latin America, like Venezuela, Argentina, like any of these countries, you're going to see a lot of stable coin adoption and usage as people have lost faith in their local currencies. And I think that if you are already looking into an alternative currency, Bitcoin is a natural stepping stone for you. It is like, it's a very easy hop if you're already in a digital asset for you to come to Bitcoin. So I think it's an educational thing. I think it's a things need to get worse for people to start asking. But I will say that our movement continues to get bigger by the day. And with this amount of institutional interest and adoption coming from BlackRock, you're hearing Wells Fargo has exposure via the ETF. You're hearing a bunch of other banks, Goldman Sachs, that came out that they had exposure, um, the Wisconsin Pension Fund. You have MicroStrategy. Like what Michael Saylor is doing on a public company level and he's just like destroying all these companies just by adopting a Bitcoin strategy. It's just a matter of time before a percentage of those companies say, you know what, like this Bitcoin thing sounds amazing or it looks good. So I think that's the track that we're heading on. I think that's where we're at. And now it's just a waiting game. Now it's just like kind of wait. And that's one of the hardest things to do, as you and I both know. We've been in the industry for a while now. Some of the worst points are when the price is going sideways, or when the price is doing nothing, or in the years of bear markets. Like, what do you get? Like that psychologically for the amount of time that you're doing it is very difficult. And those times are the best to just unplug, buy more Bitcoin, wait, focus on your life and your kids and your family and your work and whatever it is that you're doing, and let the Bitcoin cycles do its thing. That's what I would say.
Yeah, indeed. Now it's time to, you want to buy the fear, right? So now it's time. I mean, I very much involved in the space, like having a live show every day, going through news and everything. I don't know if you agree with me here, but I can see a number of people watching the show, engaging with us. Retail is not even remotely in the room with us. So there's going to be a point when Bitcoin is going to go, maybe after September is gone, or maybe when the Feds are going to cut interest rates, or maybe when the election is going to take place, or maybe in October. At some point this year, we will see a run towards maybe 80, 90, even 100K. It doesn't matter. It's going to go higher. Then you will have people coming back and say, hey, what happened? Bitcoin, what? 80,000? You kidding me? What's going on? Because I think what we've seen so far, which has never happened before, unprecedented, we've gone over the all-time high prior to the halving. And even though I do believe in the cycles, I think at some point they will have less and less impact, because I like to think that the more Bitcoin is going to get adopted, the less volatile it's going to be.
100% agree with you, man. Yeah, dude, it's very interesting times, but I think that once we get over this hill, the world is just going to be a much better place, and I think I think it's going to be a much more hopeful place, and a place filled with much more opportunity and prosperity for everyone.
And Nico, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate having you on the show. It's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you very much, man.
Well, thank you for inviting me and really appreciate it.
We'll see you on the next one.